Hi, everyone. Just sharing my screen, which hopefully you can all see fine now. And someone will call out if not. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in today. It's, I admit, a bit of a perhaps unexpected surprise that we still haven't met a year later in person, but fortunately we're starting to see each other again, and that's a wonderful thing. And I'm also, to echo what David said, grateful to the team at Henry Stewart Events for running these amazing digital events in the meantime that will also continue along with the in-person events. And I'm really grateful to all of you for being a part of this community and for keeping in such wonderful touch and communication over the last 18 months. 18 months, and I have never used a fake background. So welcome to my home office here in Greenwich. Welcome to my home. And this year, I'd like to talk about recovery. And I think we're all in some form of recovery. And I'd like to talk about how that is relevant to the dam industry. So I'm fortunate to have been a part of this community for a very long time, about 17 years working in dam now. But for those of you I have not yet met, just to briefly run you through my work, I am an independent digital asset management consultant, been out on my own for about 4 years now. And I've long worked in the dam industry as an analyst, a consultant, an implementer, lots of different roles, and even end user of many systems over the years. Most of my work now is helping companies with strategy and stewardship, and also data orchestration. So really getting your metadata aligned so that we can actually integrate and connect our dams to other systems, which of course is the current great frontier of our industry. And for a few of my clients, I serve as a fractional chief digital officer. So most of my clients don't let me show their logos, but there's a few. And I, about 5 years ago, wrote a book on dam, which really has me wedded to this industry, perhaps for the best rest of my career. I am just wanted to point out teaching a tutorial next week that's a post-conference tutorial. So especially if you're new to dam, or if you are looking to connect dam to the rest of the systems in your enterprise, perhaps part of a larger MarTech team. The tutorial is next Thursday, 9 o'clock Pacific, noon Eastern, or 17 or 5 p.m. BST. Please feel free to ask the Henry Stewart team about that if you'd like to join and learn more. This year, I felt doubly motivated to watch the Olympics. Now, I'm a big sports fan in general. I like to watch sports. And I felt like without a real audience, sadly, that these Olympians needed even more of a virtual one. Now, here in London, the Olympics started in the middle of the night and continued on into the morning. And one morning, I found myself totally captivated by the BMX competition. Now, if you're uninitiated, BMX stands for bike motocross. Now, Kai White, also known as the Prince of Peckham, he was riding for Great Britain. And I was really interested much more in watching him on his wheeled steer than I was in watching the traditional British dancing about in dressage. So Kai White, he rode on to win the silver medal. His teammate, Bethany Shriver, she won the gold in the women's division just a few minutes later. And when she fell off the bike after winning, she just collapsed and she said, "I can't use my legs anymore." Kai White scooped her up and lifted her high in victory. Now, Kai White hails from the South London district of Peckham. Now, Peckham is not where you go for the high tea and royal parades, for which those of you who don't live in London probably think it has a reputation for. It's a place where you have to be street smart. It's a neighborhood with a very tough reputation, and it makes for a different sort of education. It's a place that requires fast cycling. If you're scared, you might as well pack your bags, Kai White once said, because you're not going to ride properly if you're scared to crash. Nothing's stopping me. I am prepared to crash. And just a couple of years ago, he did actually suffer a catastrophic crash. He had a brain bleed. Kai White was in a coma for 2 weeks, and he eventually, when he emerged from the hospital, he could barely tolerate light. He didn't ride his bike for a full year. But he recovered. He fought back. He was mentally tough, as we've all had to be over the last 18 months. He rested, he trained, he worked with his brothers, he worked with the whole South London BMX team that went on to win these medals. He made a full recovery. This is London's BMX racing dynasty. These two are real British royalty. Now, I think we're all in some form of recovery at this point, aren't we? 18 months of global trauma, forced isolation, a dearth of hugs, not seeing our loved ones. We all carry our recovery burdens in one way or another. Some are far worse than others: death, divorce, drugs, and other devastations. As someone once very wisely told me when my father passed away, Theresa, you never really get over it. You just learn to live with it. So when something shakes our very foundations, as the last 18 months has, really for all of us, we need to be very deliberate about recovery. And really, who waxes rhapsodic better about recovery than rock stars? So many of them, sadly, having met a tragic end. Eminem was one who at least lived through a drug addiction to sing about it later, while Amy Winehouse's refusal to go to rehab was a sad and tragic omen. So now it's time. It's time to go back to the office. It's time to plan reunions. It's time to get on planes. I have to say, I got my first opportunity to fly last month. I was like a little kid again. It's time to cross borders and continents and oceans again. But is it possible to do so safely, with surety? Unfortunately, of course it's not. But has it ever really been sure? So I have to say that one of the most interesting and ironic projects that I worked on over the course of the pandemic started right before all the lockdowns happened. And one of my longest running clients that I've worked with for over a decade, I helped them pick their first dam, I've helped them pick their second dam. My main client said, Theresa, I want you to manage risk for the project. And I said, oh, that's a great role. I'm excited to do that. I was working with a great team. And initially that risk list was about 9 items long. You get the team together, you figure out how you're going to mitigate that risk. And then COVID hit and the pandemic hit. And then our risk register was 39 items long. The fact is, risk is everywhere. And unfortunately, the media exaggerates it. And a lot of situations tend to exaggerate risk. And we need to think about what is real risk, what is perceived risk, and of course, what is presented as risky when it's really very, very minimal. So there's certain things that we can plan for, and then there's certain things that we can't.
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there's some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns, the ones we don't know we don't know.
Excuse me, but is this an unknown unknown?
I'm not
several unknowns, and
I'm not going to say which it is.
Politicians are great at that, aren't they? Just not really saying what's what. The reason I shared this video is because when I think about the knowns and the unknowns of wars and pandemics, they're also the same kinds of knowns and unknowns that we live with every day. And of course, with our content and marketing technology projects, we are on the cutting edge. We are inventing the future every day. And so I have to admit that when my clients really make the hardest request of me, it is, Theresa, how do we future-proof it? How do we make sure that we account for everything that could go wrong? We can't. We absolutely can't. Future-proofing at least 100% future proofing is completely not possible because there will always be unknown unknowns. There are ways to mitigate the risks that we know of, but there will always be things that will come up that we don't expect. So we need to learn to live with uncertainty, perhaps more than ever before. The only way to do that is to admit what could go wrong, what we don't know, draw from the strength of our teammates in order to recover from what's gone wrong, just like Kai White did. We need to manage risk appropriately, and we need to adapt as we go along. Another one of my favorite Eminem songs, also from, I believe, his recovery album, is called I Love the Way You Lie. It's a great song, and he did it with Rihanna. It's one of my favorite to jog to at the gym. And when I think about the toughest parts of recovery, whether those recoveries are personal, professional, economic, emotional, it's very often basically the truths that are just so obvious to us, and yet we kind of lie to ourselves sometimes, right? And I think one of the things we could look at is all the different sorts of situations that kind of hold us back from recovery and progress. And so we think about how poorly the world planned for the pandemic and all the things that politicians said that were just wrong, completely incorrect. Same things happen with our projects, don't they? Sometimes, where we plan for things that just, we think, and this is part of the challenge, isn't it? We actually think that they're true when we're saying them, but then you kind of start and you go, oh gosh, no, that's actually not quite the case. And I see this a lot from, unfortunately, technology vendors. And I don't actually believe, to be fair, I don't actually believe that salespeople necessarily lie about what they're selling, but these are the things that we hear that are not entirely true. So DAM systems are generally not easy to get up and running, and they're not really fast to get going. Connectors are not seamless. Platforms are still not fully integrated. There's huge problems of scale that still exist, and I can tell you that definitely from the last few projects that I've worked on with large corporations. Scale is a huge challenge that we all still face. Proposal costs do not cover everything, and most things that we need to do in terms of the next horizon of DAM are definitely not out of the box, okay? So we need to think about these things as we embark on our projects, and we also need to think about what are the things that are holding us back from success. The status quo is generally not okay. The biggest problems we have are no longer caused by the technology. And I think when I think of all the sponsors of this event offering fantastic pieces of technology and tools to do what we need to do, but we have bigger organizational problems than we do have with issues of technology holding us back. We need, or people say, we don't necessarily need a clear RACI. I love RACI charts because they explain, okay, who's responsible for what, who's accountable, who's consulted, who needs to be informed. We'll be okay without a DAM manager. I get that all the time. Theresa, we don't really need to hire a DAM manager, do we? Absolutely, you do. And you cannot have someone who is running a DAM as 1/4 of their job. No, it doesn't work. Even the smallest organization I work with, 52 employees, they have a full-time DAM manager. And you need one too, and probably a lot more people to make this work. DAM is a one-time cost. We don't need a long-term operational team. This is no longer about CapEx. This is about operational expenses and operational teams who stay with you to keep the metadata going, to keep the system going, to work on the integrations. This is a garden to grow. It is not a one-time moment. People say, well, I need the Ferrari system when a Fiat would be fine. You know what? Buy the system that's half the cost, hire a team, and you'll be better off. And oh, governance. How could we forget? Sometimes we think we don't need those governance meetings because everyone's too busy, but they are so, so vital. We know these things. We know these things. And sometimes in the back of our mind, we know these things, but we're kind of sort of still denying them sometimes in our organizations. I like to think we're getting better, but we're not there yet. And oftentimes when things go wrong, we think back and we say, oh, we knew about that. We knew that was coming, didn't we?
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. not missiles, but microbes. Now, part of the reason for this is that we have invested a huge amount in nuclear deterrence, but we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic.
We have invested a great deal in technology and tools, but we have invested very little in the intangibles that make DAM successful. We have invested very little in metadata and staffing and change management and what really lies behind successful DAM programs. So if there's one takeaway from this keynote today, I want to say don't ignore some of these issues, because doing so will be at your peril. We need insurance policies. We need to mitigate risks. We need to mitigate viruses. We need vaccines in our organization, and we all need those to help us recover. I think there's few things more empowering than admitting if we've messed something up, something politicians are terrible at, let's face it, and becoming all the better for it. There are a few things that help us build a better and smarter future, or should say there are fewer things that help us build a smarter and better future than knowing what we should have done. And as a side comment, wasn't it nice when CEOs actually invested in things like fighting viruses rather than billion-dollar vanity space projects? Gosh, did I just say that? Sorry. So I'm convinced that Google thinks I'm trying to get over some kind of drug addiction because I've done so much reading about recovery and coming out of difficult situations for this pandemic. And I find that there's some really great guidance that we can all use in order to really get out of our isolation, get back into our offices, and really understand how we can take our DAM to the next level. Because I firmly believe that we can't just do it virtually. I really do believe that. So phases of recovery: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. This is from one of these recovery centers where people go when they're trying to get over something. I think with DAM projects and programs, especially programs, I don't even want to call them projects anymore because they should be programs. We need to admit that something needs to be done and something needs to change. And odds are, yes, that's going to cost money and people and time. We need to educate, inform, and demonstrate value on a regular basis. We need to constantly be going through an iterative process of discovery and strategy, plan and prepare to do what's necessary. There should be continuous roadmaps within our DAM programs. And that's, if you're a DAM manager or a DAM project owner, that is what you need to be thinking about on an everyday basis. Then you need to get your program, not just your technology, in place. And then, of course, maintenance. Be sure to budget for the long-term specialized managed services teams, as well as internal teams. Capable DAM and broader marketing technologies are plentiful, as you've seen from all the sponsors and as you'll see over the course of this event. We need to take better responsibility for the lack of investment in governance and accountability. That's what has really, frankly, bit us in the bum over the last decade plus. We're getting better, but we need to keep doing it more. And we need a strategic staffing layer above the implementation silos. And I believe this is what's going to get DAM to the next level. It's not having our silos of implementations, which are very important. You know, if you're on the CRM project, you're on the DAM project, you're on the CMS project, the program is the connective tissue. The future is the connective tissue. And taking our careers, our industry, our technology to the next level is in connecting these systems and having them drive customer experience better. We need corporate vaccines. You know, bad enterprise habits are contagious. There's no cure for natural human tendencies. So think about successful DAM as including risk mitigation and what I call building herd immunity to the bad habits that we have. T cells, you know, I just think vaccines are awesome, right? They're the defense for the unknown assassins. They're the defense for the known unknowns. But they have to be primed to look for these likely attackers. So I recommend a classic SWOT, you know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Know your weaknesses and threats in advance. This becomes a risk matrix. This becomes a constant living way to look at what you can improve. Have a mitigation plan. Have an adaptive immune response. You know, this is basically your T cells. Antibodies. are awesome. They're the antidote for the known attackers. So if you have the known knowns, you know that you can avoid making the mistakes of the past. Herd immunity. We're getting there slowly, but hopefully surely. So what do I consider the best vaccines for a successful DAM program when those bad habits creep in, when people say they don't want to do this, or they don't want to do that, or adoption is waning? What do you need? So I've mentioned some of these things already. These are my top 9 corporate vaccines. Awareness, just making people aware of what's going on. What is the DAM program for? What is it driving for the business? Education, change management. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. Consistent and effective governance, communications plans. Those are my 2 absolute favorite ones, because I believe that those are perhaps the most under attended to in most DAM programs. I'm so thrilled one of my clients just assigned a full-time change management lead for their digital transformation program. And we all need that. Regularly updated roadmaps. As I mentioned, if you are a DAM manager or a DAM product owner, this is your mandate to make sure that you are administering these vaccines on a regular basis. Detailed integration plans, beyond the one slide with the boxes and arrows, we need to know what data lives where in terms of its authoritative version. How does it get to where it's going? How does the data connect and flow? And so we avoid things like duplicative efforts, making sure that is squared away. That's a lot of work, that one. A vision for the future with full buy-in just across the organization, a fully staffed program. As I mentioned, it's not a one-time project, it's a program. So when bad tendencies creep back in, these are the vaccines that fight the viruses, and they win. If you're doing it right, they win. So I've taken this slide from a great company that I work with in a lot of different organizations. We share a lot of mutual clients, big brands. And this is from ICP, also one of the sponsors of this event. And they have this great sort of methodology for change management. And I am not a change management consultant, so I always look to ICP for this sort of thing. And they have what they call the 5 A's, okay? And I really like these 5 A's. It's about aligning the different groups, aligning leadership, aligning resources, then acting, making sure you have the right technology, the project team, and the change management plan in place. Then adjusting the organization. If this was proportional, this would probably be the biggest one. Adjusting the organization, migrating assets, changing your business process, your organizational model. Adoption, implementing new technologies, capabilities, and making sure the new operational model is at the right scale, reinforcing that behavior, awarding that behavior. And then finally, adaptation, adapting the new business process and technology to maximize long-term value. Again, we have to stop thinking about DAM as a project, thinking of it as a long-term program with an ongoing staff that is really making sure that this is going to work for the long haul. So how do we prepare for the next viruses that we don't know about yet? Well, Bill Gates did a great job in that presentation from 2015. If only the world had listened, we wouldn't have endured what we have, and we wouldn't have seen millions of people die. So his solution for pandemic preparedness was very clearly laid out in that presentation. And I have taken his wisdom and I have applied it to DAM. So in terms of evolutionary preparedness, we need strong technology solutions. We need a skilled and diverse team, people with training and the right background. We need to pair the brand and asset experts with the engineer. This is the power of the digital supply chain. Agility. We need to run pilots. We need to run proofs of concept. We need to fail, and we need to adapt. Always make time for R&D, analytics, and diagnostics. These are all extremely important. I love companies that make room for innovation. It's extremely important that we continue to do so. So as we emerge from our home offices, as we go back and reunite with our colleagues, here's my advice as we recover. Speak the truth. Don't be a politician. We need to contemplate the systems that we are responsible for. Be very thoughtful. Take time every day to not be looking at your screen and typing away. Take time to thoughtfully consider the risks, the knowns and the unknowns. Lay out a SWOT, list the viruses. Think like a virologist. You need to determine the best forms of defense. You need to know the efficacy and the likely variance. What's going to creep up? You know, how might this issue with adoption of the creative group or this agency affect the project? And what are all the variants of the risk? And then how do you adapt appropriately? And love RACES, you know, understand and ensure who is responsible for what. Recognize, of course, that people, not technology, are the heart of the solution. I don't agree with a lot of what Boris Johnson says, but one thing that he said over and over again during the vaccine rollout here in the United Kingdom was how awesome is the NHS, how awesome is the health service of the United Kingdom, and how wonderful are the people that have rolled out this vaccine and gotten it administered. So where would we be? You know, where would the technology be without the people and the staff that create and code that technology, that deploy it and administer it and drive the adoption? You know, it's just as important, of course. And then finally, inject your damn program with vaccines, global infrastructure, preparedness, governance, communication, and staff for the long haul. You know, uncertainty is okay. Don't confuse certainty with risk. Risk is manageable and mitigatable, but uncertainty is something we always have to live with to a much greater extent. And it's something that, even if it's done well, is exciting, frankly. It's very exciting. And just as I was finishing this keynote, I was finishing a wonderful book called The Uncertainty Mindset, which is written by my good friend Von Tan, Dr. Von Tan. And I wanted to kind of have you all think about this quote, because if you do feel nervous, if you do feel anxiety, if you do feel uncertainty, those things can actually drive certain new feelings of courage and of bravery that I think we can all have as we are emerging from our current situation. So as Von Tan says, the best research and development teams are able to continually innovate because they had a clear view of the world as an uncertain place. This made them not only more attuned to and receptive of new developments and information and resources, this perspective gave them even a more innovative mindset. It's a mindset that treats the world as uncertain rather than risky. We can manage risk, but we need to embrace uncertainty. These approaches largely eschewed the conventional pursuit of stability and known routines. So maybe during the last 18 months, we've gotten a little too used to being at home. We've gotten a little too used to being comfortable. It's time to get back out. It's time to get back together with our teams. And it's time to embrace the reopening and the recovery. Now, when Simone Biles pulled out of the Olympics, it was because she had the twisties. She felt uncomfortable doing twists in the air. And what did she do to win the bronze medal on the balance beam just a few days later? She avoided the twist. She mitigated the risk. She adapted, she prepared, and she embraced the uncertainty of getting back on the beam.
So she's been super strong, lovely height on all her elements, needs now this great dismount. So here, we'll flip to one, flip to two, double pie, just like a jump off the end. What a fantastic routine.
So I wish you all the same, that you can mitigate your risks, that you can embrace your uncertainty, and that we all come back as winners. Thank you.